We are officially at 98 days until the start of the college basketball season, and at the number 98 team in the country, we have the UAB Blazers. But before we get into the video, make sure to follow our Hoop Scoop Media on Instagram and Twitter, and make sure to subscribe on YouTube, assuming you're watching there now. Yeah, subscribing and turning on post notifications really helps us and really gets you notified whenever the next top 100 video drops every day until the start of the college basketball season. There will be a new video. So yeah. But yeah, let's get into number 98 UAB, um, who finished 23-12 last season. Honestly, pretty disappointing season overall, but then they kind of redeemed themselves by making the NCAA tournament, where their season ended in a 4-point loss to San Diego State. So yeah, Andy Kennedy now going into his fifth year as a coach of UAB, two tournament appearances already. So what are your big thoughts about? I mean, just about how last season went, honestly.
Yeah, with the roster they had, you really would have liked them to be more competitive throughout the year. But as you talked about redeeming themselves, you make the NCAA tournament. You can't really complain out of the AAC in their first season in the conference. And now they get a lot of those pieces back. So I think they have a good shot this year at making it back.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely one of the better teams in the conference. I honestly, when I was doing the rankings, I like didn't really because I had them like really high last year, like I think in the 50s or 60s, and they really disappointed. So I could see this team being really good again, but I don't know after what they did last year. But yeah, UAB returns a solid amount from last year's team, as we mentioned, but they do lose some point guard Eric Gaines started his pro career. He is gone. Javian Davis, big man, exhausted his eligibility. Daniel Ortiz transferred to North Alabama, where he previously was before he transferred into UAB. And they also lost James White, who transferred to New Orleans, and Barry Dunning, who transferred to South Alabama. So those are the losses, but they do still get a good chunk of production back. They actually get a lot of production back from last year's tournament team, um, headlined by Yaxel Lendeborg, who was really good last year. What are your main takeaways from him?
Yeah, I think he's one of the best mid-major bigs in the country
Hmm.
last season, and then he obviously will be this year. Um, Great post or paint protector, 2.1 blocks per game. He can score and rebound in the paint very well. I watched highlights and prep for this against a game against UTSA. He had like 21 points, 7 blocks, and that game he hit 5 threes, which was a bit of an outlier, but it just shows that he can stretch the floor when needed.
Yeah, he is really good. Second year coming in from JUCO this year, but yeah, a really good job at UAB for getting him back because there were rumors that he would not be returning to UAB and he would be exploring his options in the portal. So yeah, he is back at UAB. Huge get to get him back. But yeah, really one of the best rebounders, shot blockers, and yeah, really gives him that like lanky 4-5, but is also really strong inside. So yeah, he is one of the better big men in the country. So huge for UAB to have him back. Another guy to have back is Butta Johnson, Ephraim Butta Johnson. Yeah, back for his junior year, having after having a huge breakout sophomore year. Points per game went up by 7.7. So yeah, what are your main thoughts on him?
Yeah, I like what he provides on the wings. You mentioned the breakout last year as a sophomore, and he could have another jump this year, probably not as much, but increase up 13, 14 points a game. So I like what he gives them.
Yes, I agree. Very, very solid piece. Definitely really like what I saw from him last year, the progression. But a guy that I think could really break out a little bit more is Alejandro Vasquez. He is a really good scorer. Really showed the ability to like really go off in some games. Had 4 games last year where he was over 25 points per game. So can really put the ball in the basket. Yeah, and this is also his second year at UAB after playing at the junior college level. UAB had a really good JUCO class last year, so yeah, he's one of those pieces. And yeah, I think he can really take over as a more like consistent scorer because he can really score the ball. think he could probably be the leading scorer on this team. So yeah, thoughts about Vasquez?
Yeah, I think Vasquez and Johnson both take a lot of pressure off Lindeborg.
Mhm.
Um, when they have the ball in their hands, they can score. And Vasquez shot 39.4% from three last season,
Yes.
41 makes. So just a guy that'll keep everybody else open, space the floor. And I think he's primed for a big year along with Johnson.
Yep. Another one of those JUCO guys is returning is Christian Coleman, um, coming back from his second year out of junior college level, and he was really playing good basketball at the end of the year, really playing his best. And I think he can be really good this year too. Can see a breakout. I don't know how all these guys are gonna break out. Like I don't know where like all the points are going to come from, but I think if there's like one guy that really does take a jump, I think it will be Coleman. Really good athlete, solid defensive piece, and was playing, yeah, was really scoring the ball well at the end of the year, and I think that can continue. He was a really highly regarded JUCO prospect, just up there with Blendeborg and Vasquez. So I think he fully shows that this year.
Yeah, another good piece for them, athletic forward. He'll fit nicely in the front court with Lindeborg. But as you said, it's going to be hard for all these guys to break out. They all have a lot of talent, but we'll have to see where the points go to.
Yes. Another returner, the last returner that really played significant minutes last year was Tony. He's coming back for his fifth year with the Blazers after playing 115 games so far. And yeah, not like a super high usage player, but really good athlete, brings a lot of energy. So I think just that and his experience with the program is gonna be a good asset for them in his final year of eligibility.
Yeah, he started 18 games for them last year, but with one of the transfers coming in, I think he'll be reduced to a bench role. But I think a really solid piece. Familiar with the program.
Yes. The Blazers also returned Will Shaver, former North Carolina transfer who didn't see that much time last year, and Marquise Hargrove, a junior college transfer who redshirted last year. Both of those players will return to program. Not sure about playing time for them, but we will see if they were able to see expanded roles or see the floor much. But yeah, speaking about the portal, they UAB got three pieces from the portal, all of who I think are really good additions. Andy Kennedy can really recruit from the portal. That's been a thing, and even with I don't know what UAB's NIL situation is like. I assume it's probably decent for the conference, but yeah, even with the NIL um times changing and stuff, he's still being able to really recruit from the portal. My favorite get is Tyron Moore from Georgia Southern, who played on a not great Georgia Southern team last year. They were honestly pretty bad, won single digit games, but Moore was like really good. Like, despite them not being a great team, he was like actually really good, was a really high volume player, but also like really efficient on that. Took 30% shots and had an over 60% true shooting percentage, which is like insane. And also had over 25% assist rate. So like, and he can score from all three levels. So like he is really good.
Yeah, I think you mentioned a lot of it. And on that bad team, he had to create his own shot. A lot of times, he had a 61
Hmm.
effective field goal percentage off the
Yeah.
dribble, which he gives them another option. And he's got two very good scores on the wings that we already talked about. So I think he might not need to score as much as he did last year, but he'll still be a solid piece. He had the ability to facilitate, showed it last year.
Yes. Yeah, can really score from all three levels, can get to the free throw line, really efficient from there. There's not a lot to dislike about Moore. Definitely gives him like a different style from Eric Gaines. Gaines was just like the athletic, attacking the rim, defensive point guard. Moore's more of an offensive, really good everywhere on offensive end. So yeah, definitely a different look, but I think in terms of like how impactful those players can be, I think it's about a wash. Um and then yeah, another transfer, Greg Gordon, coming in from Iona. where he was actually dismissed from the team later in the year, which is maybe not a great thing, but I think he's still a really good player. And depending on, I don't even know what issues were going on there, but um, depending on that, I think he's still a really good player. So who knows what the issue was there, but yeah, he is a guy that can really get to the rim, can really score, plays with a ton of aggression. Yeah, really good defender, rebounder. So what are your main thoughts on Gordon?
Yeah, I wrote down rebounds well, loves to get in
Hmm.
transition. And then you talked about getting kicked off the team. Kennedy has a lot of experience with JUCO guys, so I feel like some of those guys often have
Yes.
their question marks off the court. So I think he'll still be able to come in, contribute, be a solid piece, and Kennedy can get him under
Yes, I would
control.
agree. One note I did have on Gordon is like his game last year, like really thrived and like getting in transition, like you mentioned, like really just getting to the rim. He was just like a different caliber of athlete than the Mac had really seen. I don't think that'll be exactly that way. He's still a very good athlete, but in the American, like there's solid athletes. I don't think you're just gonna overwhelm every single person. So I think that will be something that take into effect, maybe prevent him a little bit from being as dominant as he was at Iona. But again, I still think he's a really good piece. Yeah, he was playing some really good basketball right before he got dismissed. So I think he's still going to be very impactful, either starting or off the bench for this team. But yeah, and then the last transfer from the portal that they brought in was Bradley Azawiro, who's coming in from St. Louis. And yeah, I think he's a good like Javian Davis replacement. Not necessarily the same like style of player, a little bit more offensive focused, but also a good rim protector. But like the body is what's really like I think it's good to have like a replacement, like yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to give Lendeborg 40 minutes a game when you have
At the
Azuero coming off
five.
the bench.
And I think they can. I think Lendeborg and Ezewere can play together because Lendeborg played like a solid amount to four last year with Javian Davis.
Yeah, and then you talked about his time at SLU, and then he also has the high major experience at Georgetown. So I think just a
And
valuable.
LSU, right? Or did he redshirt?
Yeah, LSU he didn't really play, but
Yeah,
Georgetown,
but he was. I remember
yeah,
him being there.
yeah. Yeah, just a good offensive rebounder. I had that noted down. Another solid piece. If you average 12 and 6 at St. Louis and now you're going to be a bench player in the American, I
Hmm.
think that's a good piece to have.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think he was actually pretty good despite St. Louis kind of having like a train wreck of a year. Ezra was one piece I did really like from that team, and he was actually like kind of good at Georgetown as like a bench, like as like a bench big, despite like how bad they were too. But yeah,
Yeah, that St. Louis team had a lot of talent last year, but Travis Ford just didn't get it all together. And I think you'll see those guys shine at their different schools this year.
yes. But yeah, the last like transfer of sorts, um, Kennedy Bryan was another junior college transfer in Jabari McGee, who's coming in from South Plains College, one of the top junior college programs in the country, where he averaged 18.7 points per game. So definitely another guy that can really crack the rotation. I think he can also have a big impact there. I mean, yeah, really one of the best JUCO guards. So, and any thoughts on him?
Yeah, he can score as you mentioned, and then he also is a very good defender. So I think he brings a little bit of what Eric Gaines brought last year for the team, and I think he'll be a valuable piece in the backcourt off the bench.
Yes. Yeah, and then Kennedy also brought in two freshmen to this year's roster. Actually, both post grad players, so both are a little bit older, had a little bit more experience than a typical freshman. One of them is Makai Miles, who was previously committed to Wichita State in the 2023 class, but decided to take a post grad year at Sunrise instead. And yeah, I think he could due to that. I mean, he was a pretty decent recruit in the 2023 class due to already having an extra year. I think you can maybe be a little bit more ready than some other similar freshmen to make an experience. And then RJ Kennedy, a point guard from Middle Georgia Prep, I believe is where he's from. Yeah, another point guard. Don't see a ton of pathway for minutes right away with Moore and McGee, but definitely someone who could be make an impact later on in his career. Yeah. Any thoughts on those two?
I think, like you said, they're both kind of for the future with the amount of seniors and veteran returners this team has. I think Miles could crack the rotation on the wings if Greg Gordon doesn't translate well from Iona, which we talked about a
Hmm.
little. Not sure how he'll be able to, but
Yes, I agree. But yeah, as I said earlier in the podcast, the main thing for this UAB team was just living up to the talent. That's just something they didn't do last year. So yeah, like this team is extremely talented, can definitely make a push for much higher than 98th in the country, but I'm just a little bit skeptical, even though last year ended very good. Like last year, I mean, going off of last year's tournament run two to tournament, like you would think they would get better, but I don't know. But I
yeah,
really think they have the talent.
we talked a little about how many of those guys transferred up from JUCO last year, and then I think they finally all
Hmm.
started to click at the end of the season. The loss of Gaines will be big, but I think this is a team. I have them third in the American, right behind Memphis and FAU.
Yes,
But I
I have
wouldn't
them
be
third as well.
surprised if they win the regular season just based off the consistency and roster turnover compared to the other two teams.
Yes. With the talent they have, they could definitely make a push for first or second. And yeah, this team has like everything, but just want to see if it all is up. Andy Kenny definitely hasn't been like he's gotten talent. I don't know if he's lived up to talent all the time. UAB's been solid, but at Ole Miss he definitely really underwhelmed with the talent he had. So we will see what kind of year this is, but yes, very, very talented team. Definitely a lot to be excited about if you're a UAB fan. But yeah, just have those concerns with how last year went. But it ended on a positive note. We will see if they can take that positive note into this season. So yeah, that was UAB number 98 in the country. Appreciate all the UAB fans and just college basketball fans in general tuning in and listening. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms, YouTube. Assuming you're watching us here, make sure to subscribe, turn on post notifications so you can see these videos every day and be reminded of them. Follow Hoop Scoop Media on Instagram and Twitter for other content, and follow Luke at College Hoops Outlet on Instagram, at CHO Talk Sports on Twitter. And yeah, any additional notes before we wrap up day 98?
Yeah, I think just be on the lookout for the two wings, Butta Johnson and Alejandro Vasquez for breakout years.
Yes, absolutely. And yeah, day 97 coming up next. Guess in the comments who it is.